Chapter 821. Olivia counted the days. Logan had been with her for around half a year. They went from being distant to him becoming a full-time nanny for her child. He helped care for Alicia without any complaints, and she had long since dropped her guard with him. But Olivia was reluctant to tell him. The story was too long, and she didn't know where to start. "It's okay, I'm very tight-lipped. I'll never tell anyone else." Olivia glanced at Alicia and said, "Maybe later." Okay. Ethan wasn't in a rush. He waited for around half a year for her to open up. He didn't mind waiting for a while longer. He sat by the flower beds and waited for her while Alicia was taking her nap. When Olivia walked over, he stood up. "Miss Fordham, no need to stand. Let's sit and talk." Okay. Ethan had prepared a glass of juice for her. They sat under a parasol as the sea breeze blew toward them gently. Olivia took a sip. It was fresh lemonade. The taste was refreshing with a sour tinge. "Are you willing to hear a story?" "It's my pleasure." Olivia set the glass down and gazed at the ocean. The story starts from that one accident at sea. This was the first time Ethan heard about their story from Olivia's perspective. He never knew she fell for him the moment he rescued her. She didn't mention all the reprehensible things he did to her over the years. She only glossed over them. Ethan fell into a deep silence after she finished talking. He had experienced the same things as her, but hearing her recounting the events felt like he was putting salt on her wounds. He had the urge to slap himself. "I'm already divorced, but he is a very obsessive man. He will never give up on whatever he decides on. If he knew where I was, he would definitely take me and my child prisoner." Olivia used a very harsh word, prisoner. Ethan collected his thoughts before speaking. He said, "Judging from what you said, your ex-husband must have loved you a lot. Maybe he just wants to protect you and your child and doesn't plan to hurt you. Besides, they're his children too. He might be overjoyed if he knew they were still alive. Have you ever thought about getting back with him?" "Impossible." Olivia turned down that notion without hesitation. "I'll never go back to him, not for the rest of my life. Love was not an excuse for him to hurt me. I won't deny that he might have loved me a lot. But he hurt me repeatedly under the guise of love. His actions hurt me too deeply." Intense hatred appeared in Olivia's eyes when she said that. "If not for him, my adoptive father would still be alive. I would still have a home. My son would still be alive." Olivia raised her hand. "He didn't just hurt me emotionally. This is proof of the physical harm he caused me. No matter how many evil deeds his sister committed, despite her multiple attempts on my life, he still sided with her and shot me without hesitation. If I forgave him, I would be doing myself a disservice. All the suffering I had been through, the blood I shed, and the pain I felt would have been for nothing. Even if her hand had recovered, it would never return to how it was, at least not in the foreseeable future. The scar was also forever carved on her skin and on her heart. I hate him with every fiber of my being. I despise him. I would never live with that monster, even if it were for the children's sake." Chapter 822. Olivia's voice wasn't loud, but her words were deafening. Ethan didn't have a response to them. It was true. He had hurt her so deeply. Why would she ever come back to him? He was being delusional. A hint of uneasiness flashed on Olivia's face when she noticed Ethan had fallen silent. "I'm sorry. I lost my composure for a bit. No, I think a man like your ex-husband could die 100 times over, and it still wouldn't be enough to make up for the pain you felt. I just hope that I don't meet him ever again," Olivia replied. Ethan composed himself and said, "I understand now. We have to sneak into Aldenvine without him noticing, right?" "Yeah, that's why I tried to sneak onto Tobias' ship. It was unfortunate that we encountered pirates. We have to find another way now that the cargo ship is no longer an option." "Don't worry, Miss Fordham. Leave it to me." Olivia had only wanted him to help come up with an idea. She looked at him in surprise. "Can you really pull it off? I've been to so many countries over the years. I have a few underhanded tricks up my sleeve." Ethan looked at her with a straight face and said, "You can always trust me, Miss Fordham." Their eyes met and Olivia could see the sincerity in his gaze. Ethan wore contact lenses that covered up his eyes' original color. They looked yellowish to her. For some reason, she had a weird feeling in her chest. Ethan suddenly kneeled on one knee. He raised her hand. There was no levity in his actions, only solemnity and respect. He was like a medieval knight. I will never betray you. It was like a promise that surpassed their relationship as employer and employee. Olivia was stunned. Her mind blanked out. She didn't expect Logan to do something like this. What did he mean by that? But before she could think further about it, Ethan had already gotten up. I'll go make arrangements now. You may need to wait a few days, Miss Fordham. Olivia nodded absent-mindedly. The hand he touched and her face were both flushed. He was confessing, right? Probably not. In the past, Olivia would be very confident. She had plenty of men pursuing her. But Logan met her when she was terminally ill and extremely frail. She figured no sane person would fall for such a sickly woman. She even went back to her room and looked into the mirror. In the mirror, she saw the short hair on her head, shorter than potted plants. Although her features were fine, her reflection still looked weird to her. He probably meant what he said. She shouldn't think too much into it. As she was thinking about it anxiously, Ethan returned to normal and dispelled her concerns. She knew he wasn't really into her. If he did have feelings for her, things would get awkward for them. Logan kept the usual distance from her and looked at her calmly. There would only be flashes of tenderness in his gaze when he was looking at Alicia. Miss Fordham, we can leave in 3 days. Olivia was overjoyed. You really found a way. Yeah, I contacted some of my old friends. We can go near Aldenvine on a black ship. Black ship. Olivia was confused. It's a ship that isn't entirely legal. There will be a lot of illegal transactions on the ship. They would sail to the international waters for the transaction. Then, they'll return after a while. We just need to be on it until we're near Aldenvine. These ships have powerful backers and can evade investigations. Chapter 823. This route was more befitting of Logan's character. It wouldn't rouse Olivia's suspicions. A shady ship. Is it safe? Olivia asked. I've already informed my friend beforehand. As long as we stay in the room and avoid messing with anyone else, we'll be fine. We won't participate in any activities on the ship. We're just hitching a ride. In her subconscious mind, Olivia wasn't quite willing to get on a ship like that. She feared that it would be dangerous, but this was one of the very few ways for her to go back. All right, she agreed. Don't worry, Miss Fordham. I'll protect you guys. Olivia nodded, putting more trust in him now. After spending the last 3 days on the island, Ethan prepared a wig and a mask for Olivia. Miss Fordham, most of the passengers on the ship aren't good people. Ordinary people like us might raise suspicion, so we have to pretend to be a married couple. As for Miss Alicia, she'll have to put up with it. Ethan paused for a moment. Normal children wouldn't appear on ships like that unless they're goods. Olivia frowned deeply. She could also make some guesses. In shadowy corners where the sunlight couldn't reach, filth and darkness prevailed. Make arrangements as you see fit, she said. On the day of their departure, they took a yacht and boarded a huge and luxurious cruise ship. Alicia hid in the suitcase, all curled up. As for Olivia, the long wig she was wearing fluttered in the wind. She and Ethan were wearing high-end clothes and they both wore masks. They encountered a few passengers on their way. Under the masks, their eyes swept across Olivia as if they were appraising goods. The masks could hide their faces, but their human nature was in full view. Of course, Olivia didn't like those gazes. She was about to glare back at them when a strong arm appeared on her waist, pulling her in a certain direction. She rammed into Ethan's firm chest. Lowering his voice, Ethan spoke in her ear, "Excuse me." Olivia knew that he was coming to her rescue. He was using this method to tell the others that Olivia was already taken. This was the simplest and most direct method. The other people averted their gazes as if they had lost interest. Still, some shameless passengers took the initiative to scoot closer. Sweeping his leery gaze across Olivia, a man said, "Sir, are you interested in joining us? We have a multiplayer session tonight." Even though his voice was small, it still reached Olivia's ears. "It's a trading game," he added. When he spoke those words, Olivia felt herself getting worked up. Before they boarded the ship, Ethan had already told her that there were various kinds of people there. She had just arrived, but she had already received such shocking treatment. The man had just finished speaking when Ethan whipped his head around to glare at the man. His gaze was extremely cold. "Get lost. Just say you're not joining. What are you so mad for?" It was a short route, but Olivia had already met several perverts along the way. When they arrived at their room, they carried the child out of the suitcase right away. Ethan told the two not to sneak out at all costs. As long as they paid the price, they could have all their needs met in the room. After staying there for around 2 weeks, they would be able to arrive at Aldenvine. "Allie, we'll just stay here from today onward. We must never go out this door, understand?" "All right." Olivia glanced around the room. It was a huge suite. "I'll be sleeping in the small single room outside. You and Miss Alicia will be sleeping inside. If anything happens, you can call me right away," Ethan said. "Thanks." Olivia handed Ethan the card Keith had given her. "It must cost a lot to stay here. I got this card from Dr. Rogers, so you can hold on to it for now." Ethan didn't decline. "Sure, you and Miss Alicia should rest first. I'll go out and make arrangements. Be careful." When Ethan closed the door, the expression on his face instantly turned cold. He glanced at his phone. Then, he entered one of the rooms. The man who asked for a trade just now was tied up and kneeling on the floor. Kelvin spat. "Boss, we caught this dude." Ethan didn't even look at the man. When he approached the man, he kicked the man over. Stepping on his chest, Ethan crushed the man with his shiny shoe. "Tell me, what do you want to trade?" Chapter 824. The man's mouth was stuffed with someone's used sock, his face filled with terror. After all, he had only boarded the ship in search of excitement. He felt that the woman's figure was his cup of tea, so he just gave a suggestion. Did they have to treat him like this? The passengers on the ship were all indecent fellows. Why was this guy pretending like he was different? When Ethan removed the sock, the man hastily begged, "Sir, I was just kidding. Look how worked up you are. You don't have to play with us, all right?" Ha, sneering, Ethan took off the man's mask. "I'll play with you then." The masks hid their shame. If someone removed the masks, it would be the same as stripping them naked and throwing them out into the streets. Ethan knew that face. The man was a renowned entrepreneur in Aldenvine. The media claimed that he was a man who loved his wife and children. His children were quite distinguished as well. But this successful man was doing such horrible things in the shadows. It was truly disgusting. "My mask. Give it back," the man shouted. The mask fell from between Ethan's fingers and dropped onto the floor. Then, he stepped on it, crushing it into pieces. He was crushing all their disguises. Ethan moved his foot away. He always thought that he knew the ugliness of human nature. He was also aware that some rich people were quite reckless out there. He wasn't interested in those things, so he never bothered about them. But now that he found out the man's identity, he recalled having been in contact with the man last year. The man was described as a good person by the media, so Ethan was considerably polite to him. But after finding out the man's true colors, he felt that even stepping on the man was too dirty for him. He even found the man's graceful-looking wife disgusting. When Ethan thought of the man eyeing Olivia, he said in a cold voice, "Break his arm." "Got it, boss." Kelvin was wearing a mask as well. Free from the chains of his identity, he held a baseball bat in his hand as he put his hands behind his head, looking like a hooligan. "Wah, what are you doing? Do you know who I am?" Kelvin grinned. "Of course I do, Mr. Cruz. I never thought you'd be such a womanizer despite your ugly face. No one cares how you usually fool around, but sadly, you messed with the wrong guy." Ethan glanced at the man coldly before turning around to leave. When the door closed, he could hear the man's agonizing scream coming from within. Ethan stood at the entrance and adjusted his collar. He looked natural and elegant. It wasn't that Ethan was being unnecessarily cruel. After all, there weren't many normal people on the ship. That man had already had his eyes on Olivia, so if Ethan didn't teach him a lesson, he might try to make a move in the shadows. He would take the demon's path so that the demon had nowhere to go. This time, he wouldn't give anyone a chance to hurt Olivia and the child again. Ethan felt a little irritated, so he leaned against the railing and lit a cigarette. The wind and waves were quite strong on the sea. He slightly bent over, blocking the wind with a hand. His tall figure and noble air caught the attention of a masked woman nearby. The woman was wearing a super short skirt. With seductive steps, she approached him. "Can I borrow a light?" she asked. It was a secret code on the ship. If he gave her the lighter, he would be silently agreeing to it. Ethan calmly looked up and swept his gaze over the woman. She had struck a seductive pose and tried to emphasize her breasts. Under her determined gaze, Ethan tossed the lighter into the sea. Then, he walked away emotionlessly. The woman looked at his cold figure. There was an amused smile on her face. What an interesting man, she thought. When Ethan returned, he had completely shed his cold and cruel exterior. He took off his mask and was even holding a small cake in his hand. Alicia beamed when she saw that. She ran toward him happily. Uncle Logan. Chapter 825. Reaching out, Ethan caressed Alicia's head. In recent times, she had been getting closer to him. Other than the fact that she didn't call him her dad, he was no different from a father to her. "It's freshly baked. Have some," he said. Olivia shook her head in exasperation. "Don't spoil her too much. Eating too much sweet food will give her cavities." "It's okay, it's just a small piece." His gentle demeanor was a stark contrast to how he treated outsiders. Olivia wondered if it was just her, but she felt that Logan was quite different from when she first met him. But when she thought more about it, it seemed normal. After all, who would reveal their truest selves on the first meeting? "Is everything arranged already?" Olivia asked. "Yes," Ethan continued. "By the way, Miss Fordham, this is the layout of the ship. Take a look." Olivia felt that the ship was quite big when she boarded it. But when she looked at it in detail, she realized that it was indeed enormous. The lowest floor housed a large casino. The second floor showcased various antiques, herbs, weapons, and even human organs, all of which were obtained via illegal methods. There was nothing they couldn't buy as long as they had the money. The third floor consisted of world-class luxury brands, whereas the fourth floor was a gourmet haven, serving top-grade cuisines from all over the world. The floor they were on right now was the accommodation area. There was also a huge infinity pool on the top floor, which also served as a venue for wealthy people to have parties and set off fireworks. As long as they had the money, they could even live on this ship forever. Olivia's gaze fell on the second floor. "There's lots of medicinal herbs here, right?" Ethan nodded. "They not only have herbs, but also some skilled doctors too. Do you think I can find someone who specializes in treating cancer?" "Well, I can't say for sure. I'll take a look for you. Just don't go out that door." "Sure." Olivia's illness had always been a heavy burden in Ethan's mind. As long as the tumor still existed, there would always be a risk of it spreading. He was also worried that Olivia would have an episode anytime soon. Her body couldn't take another chemotherapy session after all. So, if that happened, and if she didn't have any special medication, only death awaited her. Perhaps he might really encounter a miraculous doctor in this sort of place. After all, he usually wouldn't get in contact with places like this. Those unlawful individuals were unethical, and they only wanted to get more money. Still, there were skilled and remarkable people within their midst. People usually rested during the day. So, when the sky darkened, the whole ship would light up. The true night had begun. Carrying Alicia in her arms, Olivia sat on the bed and looked up at the moon hanging above the sea. There was no wind that night, and the moon and stars shone brightly in the sky. Olivia told Alicia stories about her childhood and Jeff. "When we get back home, we'll visit Grandpa at his grave, all right? Your grandpa was looking forward to your birth back then, Allie. But sadly, he didn't live to see the day. He made lots of toys for you too, and he loved you very, very much." Alicia supported her head with her hands, saying softly, "Grandpa. Good girl. Mommy will bring you too, home very soon." Even though there were too many painful memories in that city, it also housed her memories from childhood into adulthood. Now, she was bringing her daughter back home. Her feelings this time were different as well. Leaning in her arms, the child slowly fell asleep. Olivia gazed at the sea quietly. She felt like she was drifting on the sea, and she had no idea where she would end up in the next second. In his formal attire, Ethan went to the second floor. Various goods caught his attention. They even had the latest personal firearms. Seeing how skilled Ethan was at handling the weapons, the arms merchant whispered in his ear. "Sir, I can see that you know your stuff. Are you interested in the big ones? I can add you on WhatsApp." Chapter 826. Kelvin behaved like a vain woman who just spotted branded purses and clothes. "Brent, look at this. It'll be so cool to use this in close combat. Brent, buy these for me. I also want this one and that one." Brent fell silent. Ethan took a small handgun meant for women. The merchant enthusiastically introduced, "You have a good eye. This is the latest model. It has low recoil, so it's especially suited for women. I'll take it. And this too." Ethan eyed a compact portable dagger. It would hide very well. After picking out some weapons, he went to the herb area. There were quite a lot of people in the area. They even looked like they were peddling goods at a market. Many drugs were prohibited in the country. But laws didn't exist here, only money and greed. If they had enough money, they could have all their desires fulfilled. There were no auctions tonight, so Ethan could only browse the various counters. "What do you fancy, sir? I have quite the variety here," someone called out to him enthusiastically. Because of the lack of regulations, the selling price of items on the ship was multiple times more expensive than on land regardless of rarity. The customers were rich, so they wouldn't bother too much about it. Ethan fiddled with a medicine bottle. Before he could ask about it, the merchant scooted over with a mysterious look. "Good choice, sir. This is our most popular item. You'll be full of vigor for the whole night. Even the toughest woman will give in once she has experienced it." Can you imagine? Ethan had no idea that he was holding a drug like that. He hastily put it back and coughed lightly. "Do you have any anti-cancer drugs?" "Of course. How can I not? Do you know what they call me?" Ethan studied the middle-aged man in front of him. The man seemed to be in his 40s, and there weren't many wrinkles on his face. He looked like a guy who smiled often, but when he smiled, he had a certain cunning air to him. "No," Ethan said. "Sir, they call me the Reviver." "Oh, I know this one." Kelvin appeared out of nowhere. Yo, what's up? Check it out, the cream of the crop. Get it while it's hot, and I'll even throw in a discount, chop chop." Kelvin started rapping all of a sudden. Feeling a little exasperated, Ethan shoved him to the side. Then, he continued, "I've never heard of it. What drugs do you have here?" "You came to the right person, sir. I'm the miraculous doctor who can even revive the dead. I can cure any disease, and cancer is a walk in the park for me." Kelvin whispered in Ethan's ear, "Boss, all swindlers say the same thing." "Swindlers? Who told you I'm one of them? I researched malignant tumors for years. Coupled with some traditional scrolls left by my ancestors, along with an original recipe, I can prolong a person's life even if the Grim Reaper is after them." If he hadn't said those things, Ethan might have believed him. But now that he had said such outrageous claims, Ethan immediately turned around and left. No one would dare to claim that they could cure a malignant tumor completely. "Sir, don't leave so soon. I mean it. If I weren't poor, I wouldn't have come to a place like this. If you don't believe me, you can try some of my other drugs. I guarantee you'll want to use them again after the first try." Kelvin retorted, "Why would a perfectly healthy person take drugs? Are you trying to jinx my boss? Who said that your boss is perfectly healthy? The fire in his body is burning wild. He should vent properly." Ethan's ears turned red as he quickened his pace. Kelvin caught up to him. "Ahem, did that quack hit the bullseye? Boss, have you never dealt with it yourself while Mrs. Miller was gone?" Ethan paused in his tracks. Then, he glared coldly at Kelvin. "Shut up." Kelvin stood where he was, stunned. He couldn't believe it. Did Ethan abstain in all those years ever since Olivia left? Chapter 827. Calvin stared at Ethan from the back. He couldn't help but feel bad for him. He was simply too pitiful. When Ethan agreed to marry in the beginning, it was just because of a promise. He had never once touched Marina. Through it all, Olivia was the only woman he had ever slept with. Calvin was different. Even though he was single, he had many ways to let it out. But Ethan was fully devoted to one woman only. If they couldn't get back together in the future, he would have to be alone for life. When Calvin thought about that, he pitied Ethan. "Brent, why don't we buy a life-sized doll for Mr. Miller? They have a lot of lifelike ones these days, so it's not considered a betrayal, right?" Brent was exasperated. "If you're so eager to die, I won't stop you," Calvin said sadly. "I was just being considerate of Mr. Miller. If he keeps holding it in, will he break down someday? This won't do, Brent. You have to come with me to buy something for him. He shouldn't continue keeping it in." Ethan had to walk for quite a while before the blush on his ears receded. He had to admit that he did indeed feel a little impulsive around Olivia, and he had tried his best to endure it. Was his desire so obvious? Did that quack figure it out just by grabbing his hand and measuring his pulse? Ethan shook his head. That man was nothing more than a random swindler. Since Ethan couldn't get the drug he was looking for, he decided to bring something delicious back for Olivia and Alicia. Perhaps because of what the drug merchant said, Ethan did feel a little hot and bothered in his heart. So, he ordered a cocktail for himself. Staying by Olivia's side was too tiring for him. He had to pretend he was another person at all times. Sitting in the booth, he closed his eyes as he rubbed his temple with one hand. There was an exhausted expression on his face. Suddenly, a waft of fragrance entered his nostrils. Opening his eyes, he saw the bartender placing a cocktail on his table. "Sir, this is our signature cocktail, Allure. Enjoy." Allure. Ethan had only ordered a signature cocktail just now, but he didn't expect its name to be so suggestive. The alcohol came in two colors, purple and dark red. True to its name, the cocktail looked alluring. Ethan had always had a decent tolerance for alcohol. He drank the cocktail casually, but then, he noticed that the woman still hadn't left. She was wearing a bunny-themed uniform, and she wore a pair of bunny ears on her head. She wore a super short skirt paired with white stockings with ribbons on them. She was also wearing stilettos. She didn't wear a mask. Her features were pure yet seductive, which matched her outfit very well. Even her makeup gave her a pitiful look. Ethan only glanced at her before looking away. "You can leave now." "Sir, did you like the cocktail?" The woman didn't leave. Instead, she asked him a question. After drinking the wine, he noticed that the alcohol wasn't too strong. It was just some fruit wine with ice cubes and mint added in. A few seconds later, there was an irresistible sweet aftertaste in his mouth and he was compelled to keep drinking. Before he knew it, he had already finished the whole glass. He commented calmly, "It's not bad." The woman suddenly bent over. If he looked up a little, he would be able to see her curves. Her tone shifted as she breathed in Ethan's ear. "It's a custom-made order for you, sir. I'm so glad that you like it. It's a good thing I waited for you." Ethan's gaze instantly turned cold. This woman was the same flirty woman from before. The same woman who had hit on him and asked for a lighter. "It's you." Smiling, the woman approached him. Then, she placed a hand next to Ethan. Lowering her voice, she said, "I sense a familiar vibe from you. Would you like to have a try with me tonight? I guarantee it'll be even more interesting than wine." Chapter 828. Ethan glanced behind him. Calvin and Brent were missing. Before this, he was able to drink alcohol without any worries because those two were around. But now, they were nowhere to be found, so Ethan was faced with this situation. The woman in front of him thought that with her looks and figure, no man would be able to resist her charm. But when Ethan turned to look at her, she didn't see any trace of desire in his eyes. There was only endless majesty and coldness. He was the one sitting, and she was standing. But they gave off immensely different vibes. Ethan supported his head with a hand. He looked like a king sitting on his throne, looking down on everything beneath him. She felt like she was a mere insect in his eyes. But the woman refused to surrender. She thought that this was all because the drug hadn't kicked in yet. She sashayed closer to Ethan, trying to get close to him. She refused to believe that her figure, which she took pride in, did not affect him at all. If Olivia were here to see this, he would be done for. So, Ethan decided to escape while he could. Despite his extreme fury, Ethan appeared calm. But the calmer he looked on the surface, the stronger was the storm raging within. The woman had no idea that her flirtatious figure was nothing more than a disgusting pile of rotten meat in Ethan's eyes. He asked coldly, "How do you propose we try?" The woman was elated when she finally heard his voice. She said in an even more seductive tone, "I'll play along with you no matter how you like it." "All right." Ethan's gaze turned dark. He spoke through his thin lips, "Let's have it your way, then." The man had agreed to it, but the woman somehow felt a chill running down her spine. She glanced at the man's throat. According to her many years of experience, this man must be of the highest quality. When she imagined the man getting crazy over her with that body of his, she was so excited that her blood boiled. She licked her lips. "Let's go to my room, then." She was planning to suggest going to the infinity pool, which was even more exciting. But this was their first meeting, and she couldn't scare this top-quality man away. Ethan's mask covered half of his face. She couldn't make out his expression, but she could see his deathly cold lips, which were slightly curved. "All right, I'll play with you to your heart's content tonight." Soon after Olivia told her a story, Alicia fell asleep. However, Olivia herself was wide awake. Putting on her coat, she stood on the balcony and enjoyed the ocean breeze in a moment of peace. Sometime later, she heard the sound of a door closing. Logan must have returned. She wondered if he had gotten any useful information. After covering Alicia with a blanket, she carefully made her way to the partitioned room outside. She even closed the door in the partition to avoid waking Alicia. In the darkness, she could hear the man's heavy breaths. He sounded like a beast quietly licking its wounds in the dark. Olivia found it odd. The lights in the room were off. Olivia was about to turn on the lights when a fiery palm was placed on the back of her hand. The man's low and hoarse voice sounded. "Don't." Olivia could hear something off about his voice. She hastily asked, "What happened? Did you get hurt?" Ethan had no idea what sort of drug he was given. Its effects were astonishingly strong. To avoid scaring Olivia, he tried his best to control his voice. "I'm fine. It's getting late, so you should rest now." He didn't sound fine at all. Olivia thought of the possibilities. "Did you get hurt?" she asked. "No." Olivia reached out toward his body. The fabric her fingertips touched was drenched. Logan's body was incredibly hot. Olivia panicked. "Just let me turn on the lights to have a look." What exactly happened? Chapter 829. Taking advantage of his height, Ethan covered the switch with his hand and blocked Olivia's actions. He didn't want her to see his embarrassing appearance right now. "Don't worry, Miss Fordham. I'm fine, I swear. You should go and keep Miss Alicia company." The more he tried to hide something, the more Olivia was worried about him. She was sure that this man had gotten hurt, but he hid it on purpose so that she wouldn't worry about him. The man had stopped her from turning on the lights, and in her panic, Olivia reached out to touch his body. Ethan, who was at the breaking point of his endurance, almost lost control. He said in a suppressed tone, "Don't touch me. Then tell me what exactly happened to you." "I'm fine." But Olivia refused to believe it. His body was drenched in sweat, so he must have suffered a serious injury. If not, he wouldn't have sweated so much from the pain. But where was his wound? Olivia kept groping around. Unable to endure it anymore, Ethan suddenly reacted, pinning her onto the single bed at the side. Their bodies fell onto the bed together. Olivia subconsciously wondered if he was losing his balance because of the extreme blood loss. She didn't even suspect anything in that aspect. "Logan, where are you hurt? Just tell me." Her anxious voice rang out behind Ethan's ears. He felt her breath tickling him a little. Ethan lay there, not moving as he took in large gulps of air. "Please stop asking, Miss Fordham." He was trying so hard to hold it in that his voice began to tremble. Olivia was a nervous wreck. You can't leave it like that. I'll get a doctor for you. I won't let anything happen to you. Ethan's seductive voice rang out. Do you sincerely want to help me? Of course. You've helped me for so long. If you're in danger, I'll help you too. In the beginning, Olivia distanced herself on purpose and didn't dare to approach anyone. But now, after spending so much time together, Olivia had to admit that she had already acknowledged him as her friend. All right, Ethan gulped. Olivia was still waiting for him to tell her what had happened, but in the next moment, Logan suddenly wrapped his arms around her waist and pulled her into his embrace. Their bodies were instantly pushed against each other's. Olivia didn't even have a chance to react. The first sensation she felt was the man's hard and hot body. In the next second, she noticed something off near his thigh area. She was a woman who had given birth to a few children before. So, she knew very well what that was. But she had only ever touched Ethan before. She had never even held the hand of another man, much less been in such an intimate position. Olivia's body froze, and she was stunned. She felt as if her mind had just exploded. Ethan could sense the woman in his arms halting her actions. She was as stiff as a stick. Her voice had begun to tremble as well. It was no wonder that Logan refused to tell her what happened. How could he possibly mention such a thing? Olivia had the urge to slap herself. She shouldn't have been so enthusiastic about it. But she had already spoken those words. She wondered how she could clear that up. She said shakily, "How did this happen?" Waves of heat crashed continuously onto Ethan's body. Still, he gritted his teeth and answered, "Someone drugged me." If even he could be drugged, then this ship truly was riddled with danger. Olivia stammered, unsure of what to say. She wasn't experienced in helping someone deal with this. "Would you like to have a cold shower?" she asked. The hand on her waist was burning. Gritting his teeth, Ethan spoke in her ear. "Miss Fordham, help me." Chapter 830. That damned woman must have anticipated his reluctance to give in, so she enhanced the effects of the drug. Ethan thought that things would blow over if he endured long enough. He didn't expect the effects of the drug to pick up pace as time passed. The feeling got even stronger too, and he also grew lightheaded. He felt as if he was floating on a cloud. His hot breath spilled over Olivia's ear. She was sensitive there, so she trembled. She declined righteously. "No, Olivia widened her eyes. The man's lips kissed hers without any warning. Her heart was thumping wildly. She had only ever loved Ethan, but they were divorced already. She was free, so she wasn't breaking any morals if she did it with someone else. But she never intended to be involved with other men. She was both shocked and furious at the sudden kiss. After she recovered from the shock, she hastily struggled. "Logan, wake up." Logan's body was like a huge furnace that enveloped her, preventing her from escaping. "It's too late." Ethan spoke into her ear, "I can't stop now. I'm sorry." In the beginning, before Olivia appeared, he could still hold it in. But now that things had progressed to this point, this was out of his control. He had abstained for a few years, and he was also reunited and then separated from Olivia. He had suppressed all his emotions in his heart, and the drug served as the trigger. The drug gave him a chance to release everything he had been holding in. Olivia panicked. How did things turn out like this? The man's burning lips found her neck. Ethan knew her body too well. Every part of his body felt like it was being set on fire. Olivia knew that he had lost his rationality, but this wasn't an excuse for him to do as he pleased. "Don't do this, Logan." Her hands were weak, so when she pushed him, it only felt like she was teasing him and playing hard to get. Ethan's eyes were red. His remaining sliver of rationality told him that he shouldn't do this, but his instincts had already taken control. Time and again, he was dragged into the devil's abyss. "Miss Fordham, I can't hold it in. I feel so awful. Can you hug me, please?" He was so needy that he even pleaded for a hug. The contrast between his current behavior and his usual attitude was just too huge. "Logan, wake up. Let go of me. I'll help you think of a way." Olivia knew that he wasn't doing it on purpose, so she was still quite polite toward him. "There are doctors on the ship. I'll get a doctor for you, all right." If that doesn't work, I'll get a woman for you. What's your type? Pretty ones. Seductive ones. If it were before, Olivia wouldn't even say such things. She was truly out of options now, so she could only grit her teeth and speak. She thought that anyone would be better than her. She was a sickly patient whose hair hadn't even grown out. She was probably uncomfortable to hug. No man would choose her. Logan must be treating her like this because of the drug's effects. The ship did provide services in that area. As long as they had the money, they could get anyone they wanted. When Ethan heard her words, he didn't let go. Instead, he hugged her even tighter. No, I only want you. Olivia was stunned. She recalled that time when they were on the island. The man had gotten on one knee and held her hand, saying that he would never betray her. Could it be that he truly? Olivia could only tolerate them being friends. If he had such feelings for her, she wouldn't be able to be with him in the future. He had hidden his feelings so well that Olivia didn't even sense anything. After realizing his thoughts, Olivia finally sensed danger. She began struggling in a frenzy. Logan, stop. She no longer had mercy on him. Lifting her leg, she kicked in the direction of his private parts. Once he felt the pain, he would let her go. Then, she would take the chance to escape. But the man was already anticipating her reaction. Ethan blocked her move, wedging a leg between hers as he trapped her firmly in his arms. His words sounded like the devil's whisper. Miss Fordham, please.